Hi, everyone. Welcome to my home office. So, when I'm working at home, this is what you'll see. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about nonfiction because it's the very first literary unit that we are going to be covering in English 4A. It's also the biggest type of reading that you're going to have to do if you're going on to the college or university level. It's not often, unless you're going into an English field, that they're going to ask you to read novels or ask you to read works of fiction. So, we're going to cover the different types of nonfiction and read a few selections from different forms and also talk about how you should look at them. So, first and foremost, what does the term nonfiction mean? You guys are seniors at this point, so you really should know that non means not and fiction is made up. So, nonfiction put together is not made up. Okay, so it's about real people, real historical events. There's a bunch of different types of nonfiction. They're all listed on your screen. Things like biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, diaries, letters, essays, news articles, and speeches. When we cover this unit, we're going to be going through different types, and I'm also going to be having you guys look at different types of questions and how you would analyze these pieces and what their purpose might be. So each time we focus on one, I'll make sure I tell you what it is, and I'll tell you why we're studying that and what you should be looking for. So, just like fiction, nonfiction has a purpose. And its purpose could be to inform, to explain, to entertain, or to persuade. The one thing that I want you to remember, however, is that even if it seems like it might be just there to entertain you, or it doesn't seem like it's trying to persuade you, usually the author is telling their story for a reason. They want you to become aware of a situation. They don't just want you to read about their life because they think you're going to think it's funny or something like that. They want you to learn something from it. So always look at nonfiction and figure out why. Why do I need to read this story? Why do I have to take a look at it? Now, if it is more along the lines of entertainment and you do think that it's something that's out there to entertain, right now, one of the big things that is on the New York Times bestseller list is the biography of Kevin Hart. So a lot of people might think that that is entertaining, and parts of it are kind of funny because even though it's a biography, somebody else helped him write it. He didn't write it himself. He sat down and talked to the author through it. So his tone and his jokes are there. But it does have, again, a purpose. What should you learn from Kevin Hart's life? What kind of lessons do you want to learn? But this one is a little bit more entertaining. And if you're looking at one that is more entertaining, you're going to look for the elements that are there the same way that they would be in a fiction piece. So there is use of figurative language, there's use of suspense, there will often be a climax in the story. They experiment with different types of narration. Sometimes they tell things in the first person, sometimes they tell them in the third. There's elements of plot. You can definitely see like a rising action, a climax, and then a conclusion. And then there's quite often conflict. So the person who's telling the story tells you about conflicts that they have had. If it's a historical event, they're going to focus in on the conflict that was involved in that historical event. If it's a war, obviously, that's a pretty big conflict. So if the purpose is to entertain, it's going to have a lot of the elements that fiction pieces would have. If the purpose is more to inform, so these are the things that you read in like your history textbooks, your science textbooks, articles that your professors are going to give you, you're going to look for the 5 W's and the 1 H. So the 5 W's are the who, what, when, where, why. There's 5 of them. And then the H is the how. How did it get done? So look for that information, and that's usually the information that if a professor has asked you to read something, a science teacher, a history teacher has asked you to read something, that's the information that they want you to get out of it. So note-taking wise, just write those 5 W's on a sheet of paper and the H, and then if you know that information, you probably have understood the piece well enough to be able to do your assignment or to be able to engage in a college lecture or discussion. If the purpose is to persuade, they want you to do something, they want you to change your way of thinking about a situation, they want you to behave in a certain way. So you have to figure out what is the thesis statement. Sometimes it's in the traditional place that it's in when you write a paper. So it might be in the introduction, it might be that last sentence. Or it could be something that the author has led you to, and it's not until the very end. So at the very end of their speech, at the very end of their editorial that they've written, There's a call to action. They give you all these facts, they make all these points, and then they ask you to do something. They use a lot of persuasive techniques, like they might appeal to your emotions. They might try and make you angry or make you sad. They might make you want to feel nostalgic, like think about things that you've gone through. They use what is called loaded language, and that's also called purposeful diction, where they choose words on purpose that they know are going to impact you in a certain way. Other persuasive techniques that you need to make sure that you're aware of, no matter what type of piece it is, look for a problem solution. What is the problem that they're trying to solve? What is the problem that they're highlighting? And what are you supposed to learn from their discussion of that problem? You're going to notice on the screen there's a picture of what is called the rhetorical situation. And when we get into the speeches that we're going to cover, so when we do that portion of nonfiction, you are going to look at the rhetorical situation. How does the speaker manipulate the audience? How do they use their own ethos, which is their own credibility, to persuade you? And what is the subject matter that they're trying to convey? So all of those things come together to persuade the audience. Now, I know that this kind of seems like a lot, just general information, but it's just kind of so that you can enter into the dialogue when we're talking about the literature that we're going to cover in this unit. The next slide is talking about one specific type, and that is a memoir. So the first piece that we are going to read is a memoir. So just so that you know what a memoir is, if it happens to pop up on any kind of assessment. Bear in mind that I said that. Now, a memoir is a historical account or biography written from personal experience. So it's a person telling their own story, okay? So those of you who are familiar with nonfiction, you might be thinking, well, isn't that an autobiography? Somebody's story that they're telling themselves? The answer is yes, it is. But it's a very specific kind of autobiography. So what makes a memoir a memoir? You'll notice in the term memoir, you see the word memory. It has the same root word. So both an autobiography and a memoir are a person's life. It's a story of a person's life as written by themselves. They're telling their own story. An autobiography, something that's considered more an autobiography, is more of a factual retelling of a person's life. It begins with their birth, where they were born, when they were born, who their parents were, where they went to school, all things that can be looked up and verified. A memoir is usually the story of somebody's memories or impressions of an event. So what that means is they're kind of telling you their philosophy or how they felt in a moment. So it's not really as based in fact as an autobiography. Hopefully that makes sense. It's more of somebody's impression of a situation. Take a look at the picture that's in the center, bottom center of the screen, A Long Way Home, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. The reason why I bring this up is because it is somebody's experiences growing up in a country in Africa and being taken by soldiers and forced to become a child soldier in a civil war. It doesn't give you like the historical background of how the war happened. It doesn't give you like the political parties or things that you can look up. It oftentimes doesn't even give you really specific dates. It just tells about the author's experiences as he went through it. All of it is true. It's been verified in other ways, but it's not all about the facts. It's more about his memories and his impressions of these situations. So if you took part in any of the protests that happened over the summer, any of the Black Lives Matter protests, and you decided to write about your experiences, you wouldn't go all the way back to when you were born and say, on April 15th, 2002, I was born to this person and this person at this hospital. You wouldn't go all the way back. You would kind of start at a good starting point. How did you get to that point where you decided you wanted to take a stance on something? How did you feel while you were there? That's more of a memoir. If you look at the one that's next to A Long Way Gone, Eat, Pray, Love, That's about somebody's experiences where she decided to kind of like go on a journey where she was going to learn about herself, and she traveled from country to country to country, and it didn't tell the entire story of her life. It just told the story of this journey that she decided to go on. So a memoir is a little bit more about somebody's experiences during an event. Can it go all the way back to a person's birth and tell the whole story of their life? Yes, it absolutely can. So, can a memoir be an autobiography as well? Absolutely. Can an autobiography be considered a memoir? Absolutely. But when you look at kind of the general tone and the general feeling you get from the piece, if it is more personable, if it is more based in memory and somebody's experiences and feelings, it does lean more towards memoir as opposed to autobiography. If there is a lot of facts told about how the person's life evolved, where they were born, how they were born, where they went to school. I almost said how they were conceived. That would have been bad. We're not going to tell that. But if it is more based in fact, then it's an autobiography. Okay? So you don't have to do anything with this information right now. It's kind of the background information that you need to have in order to be able to do Friday's lesson, which on Friday, we will be reading a memoir together and doing kind of a discussion activity with it. So make sure that you remember the information that I told you. It's pretty basic stuff. And I will see you guys on Friday. Bye.